I sat alone in my cubicle on Thanksgiving morning at 7 a.m. The office was empty and silent. I stared at the email on my screen from Chad Westbrook, the CEO's 28-year-old nephew and newly appointed VP of Operations. The subject line read, "Mandatory Thanksgiving coverage. No exceptions." I thought about my family gathered at my sister's house 300 miles away, the turkey I would not taste, the nieces and nephews I would not see. My phone buzzed. It was Chad. "You're single. No kids. Perfect for holiday duty. See you at 8. Chad arrived at 8:30 a.m., half an hour late, dressed in jeans and a hoodie, carrying a paper bag from some expensive brunch place. I had been working since 7 a.m. on the quarterly reports he had demanded urgently the day before. He did not acknowledge the stack of printed reports on his desk. Instead, he tossed his empty coffee cup in the general direction of the trash can, missed by about 2 feet, and left it there on the carpet. I kept my head down, trying to focus on reconciling the accounts receivable spreadsheet. Maybe if I stayed quiet and productive, he would leave me alone. That hope lasted about 10 minutes. Chad appeared at my cubicle entrance, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He had that smirk on his face, the one that made my stomach knot up with dread. "Florence. Conference room now." I followed him down the hallway, my flat squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The conference room felt cavernous and cold. Chad sat at the head of the table, naturally, and gestured for me to sit about 4 chairs down. "So," he said, pulling out his phone and not looking at me, "we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." I waited. He kept scrolling through his phone for what felt like a full minute before continuing. "The company is doing a mandatory corporate team-building event the week between Christmas and New Year's. You know, the 27th through the 30th. We're taking all 80 executives to a luxury ski resort in Colorado. 5-star treatment, the whole deal." My heart sank. I was an accountant, not an event planner. "Our regular event coordinator is on maternity leave," Chad continued, finally looking up from his phone. "So you're going to handle it." "Chad, I appreciate the opportunity, but I've never planned an event like this. I'm not sure I'm qualified to." "Oh, come on, Florence." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How hard can it be? You book a resort, arrange some transportation, order some food. Even you can manage that. The timeline seems really tight. That's only 3 weeks away, and with the holidays, you don't have a life anyway. Just work. What else are you doing? Spending Christmas alone with your cat?" He leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. The words stung more than they should have. Yes, I was single. Yes, I lived alone. But I had family, friends, a life outside this office. Or at least, I used to. "Actually, I do have plans with my family for Christmas," I said quietly. "Cancel them." His voice went flat, all pretense of joviality gone. "This is your job now. Or would you prefer unemployment? Because I can make that happen with one phone call to my uncle." There it was. The threat. Chad's uncle was Robert Westbrook, the CEO and founder of the company. Chad had been hired 6 months ago and promoted to VP within 3 months, despite having no relevant experience. Everyone knew why. Everyone stayed quiet about it. I needed this job. My mother had surgery 4 months ago, and even with insurance, the medical bills were crushing. I had been helping her make payments, stretching my own budget to the breaking point. Losing my job was not an option. "I'll do it," I said. "Smart choice." Chad slid a folder across the table toward me. "Here's everything you need. Vendor preferences, service requirements, the works. Budget is somewhere around $50,000, but honestly, go higher if you need to. We want luxury. the best of everything. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of vendor websites, contact information, and a handwritten list of requirements. Private ski instructors for all 80 executives. 5-star catering for every meal. Luxury shuttle transportation from the Denver airport. Full spa services. Live entertainment for the evenings. The list went on and on. These are all really high-end vendors, I said, scanning the pages. Are you sure about the budget? This looks like it could run well over $50,000. The budget is flexible. My uncle fully supports this. It's his vision for company culture. Building strong executive relationships. Don't worry about the cost. Worry about making it perfect. Something felt off. I had been with the company for 6 years. Worked my way up from junior accountant to senior accountant. I had excellent performance reviews, a reputation for being thorough and detail-oriented. But this was completely outside my role. Why me? Why not hire a professional event planner? As if reading my mind, Chad stood up and headed for the door. Oh, and Florence? I specifically chose you because you're always so compliant. You do what you're told, you don't ask too many questions, and you're desperate to keep your job. That makes you perfect for this. He left the conference room, and I sat there alone, staring at the folder. I pulled out my phone and started searching for the first vendor on the list. Alpine Luxury Transportation. The website looked professional enough. But when I clicked on the About Us page, something caught my eye. The business address was in a small town I had never heard of. I searched for the town. Population: 2,300 people. Seemed like an odd place for a luxury transportation company that serviced Aspen and Vail. I went through the rest of the vendors. Mountain Peak Catering, Summit Spa Services, Elite Ski Instruction, Prestige Event Entertainment. Every single one had an address in the same region, all within a 30-mile radius of each other. None were in any major Colorado ski town. Then I searched the business registrations. Mountain Peak Catering was registered just 6 months ago. The owner of record was Bradley Westbrook. My hands went cold. Bradley Westbrook. I Googled the name along with Chad Westbrook. Brothers. They were brothers. I closed the folder carefully, my mind racing. This was not just nepotism or bad judgment. This looked like fraud. Chad was funneling company money to his brother's fake businesses, and he had chosen me specifically to be the fall guy if anyone ever questioned it. Desperate, compliant, easy to blame Florence. I was trapped. If I refused, I would be fired, and I could not afford that. If I complied, I would be participating in what looked like a massive fraud scheme, and if it ever came to light, my name would be all over the paperwork. I would be the one who booked the vendors, approved the payments, signed the contracts. Chad knew exactly what he was doing. He had picked the perfect victim. I spent the Thanksgiving weekend at my apartment, unable to enjoy the leftovers my sister had insisted I take home before I rushed back to the city. Every time I tried to watch a movie or read a book, my mind drifted back to those vendor names and Chad's smug face. By Saturday morning, I had made a decision. I would try to do the right thing. I would present Chad with better options. Legitimate vendors. Cost savings. Maybe he would back down. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe I was being paranoid. I spent the entire weekend building a comparison document. I researched, established, reputable event companies in Colorado. I got quotes. I built spreadsheets showing how we could save the company at least $30,000 by using legitimate vendors with proven track records and stellar reviews. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Chad. He made me wait until 2 p.m., then showed up 15 minutes late. What's this about, Florence? I'm very busy. I slid the comparison document across his desk. I've done some research on vendors. I found some excellent alternatives that could save the company a significant amount of money while still providing luxury services. Chad picked up the document, glanced at the first page, and his face darkened. What is this? Cost comparisons. These companies have better reviews, more experience, and lower prices, I thought. You thought? He stood up abruptly and I flinched. You thought you would undermine my authority? Question my judgment? No. I just wanted to present options. As an accountant, I thought cost savings would be. Are you saying I don't know what I'm doing, Florence? I'm a VP. You're just an accountant. He threw the document back at me. The papers scattered across his desk and onto the floor. Let me be very clear, Chad said, his voice low and threatening. You will use the vendors I specified. No exceptions, no alternatives, no questions. Do you understand? But the costs are going to be very high. The initial quotes I'm getting are, not your concern. The company can afford it. Just book everything and stop trying to be a hero. He sat back down and started typing on his computer, dismissing me. Chad, I really think we should discuss the budget with the CFO before. I already discussed it with Gerald. Chad spun his monitor around to show me an email chain. See? He's fully aware and has given complete approval. I read the email. Chad had sent a brief note to Gerald Hampton, the CFO, saying, Florence is doing excellent work on our executive retreat. Request full approval to proceed with bookings. Gerald had replied. Approved. Glad to see this kind of initiative. Chad composed a new email right in front of me, CCing Gerald. Florence expressed some concerns about vendor costs, but I've assured her the company fully supports this investment in executive development. Gerald, please confirm. Within minutes, Gerald replied. Absolutely. This is an important initiative. Proceed as planned. Florence. I left Chad's office feeling sick. He had boxed me in perfectly. The CFO had approved it. Chad had documented that I had concerns, but that management overruled them. If anything went wrong, I would be the cautious accountant who was told to proceed anyway. Over the next week, I started booking with Chad's vendors. Every quote that came back made my stomach turn. Alpine Luxury Transportation wanted $75,000 for airport shuttles and local transportation. Mountain Peak Catering quoted $120,000 for 3 days of meals. Summit Spa Services wanted $45,000 for spa treatments. Elite Ski Instruction needed $50,000 for private lessons. Prestige Event Entertainment wanted another $30,000. The total was approaching $500,000 for a 3-day event. For 80 people, that was over $6,000 per person. It was insane. I sent Chad a detailed breakdown, expressing concern about the budget. He responded within minutes. Not your concern. Just book it. The company can afford it. I had no choice. I started signing contracts. Every confirmation email went through my work account. Every purchase order had my name on it. Every contract listed me as the primary contact. Chad had positioned himself as merely providing direction while I was the one executing. If anyone ever investigated, the paper trail would lead straight to me. I started keeping copies of everything. I saved every email from Chad to my personal cloud storage. I documented every conversation in a notebook I kept at home. I photographed every contract before I signed it. I did not know what I was protecting myself from, but I knew I needed protection. At lunch on Tuesday, Janet from HR pulled me aside in the cafeteria. Janet was about 50, had worked at the company for over 20 years. She had kind eyes, but always looked tired. Florence, can we talk outside? We went to a bench in the small courtyard behind the building. It was cold, and Janet wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me, Janet said. Be very careful working with Chad. What do you mean? The last person who worked closely with him, David Patterson, got fired for financial irregularities. He was a senior accountant, just like you. Chad gave him a special project involving vendor payments. 3 months later, David was accused of embezzlement. My heart started pounding. What happened? David maintained his innocence, but they had emails from his account approving excessive payments, evidence of him communicating with vendors about rush fees and expedited services. He was fired. He tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. Last I heard, he was working retail. Couldn't get another accounting job. Do you think he actually did it? Janet looked at me directly. I think Chad is very clever, and I think he's untouchable because of his uncle. The CEO protects him no matter what. David wasn't the first person to have problems working with Chad, and he won't be the last. Why are you telling me this? Because you're a good person, Florence. You don't deserve what's about to happen to you. But I have a daughter with special needs, and I can't afford to lose my job. I can't help you officially. I can only warn you. She stood up. Document everything. And start looking for another job. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Could I quit? No. I needed the income. Could I go to the police? And say what? That I suspected fraud but had no proof? That I had already signed contracts and approved payments? At 2 a.m., I got out of bed and checked my personal email. There was a message from an unknown address. The subject line read, "You're not the first." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. Inside was a forwarded email chain from 2 years ago. It showed planning for an executive retreat that Chad had organized. The cost was $300,000. The retreat was scheduled, deposits were paid, and then at the last minute, it was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. The email chain showed frantic communications about trying to get refunds from the vendors. But the vendors were unresponsive. The money was gone. And the person whose name was on all the contracts, who had approved all the payments, was David Patterson. The anonymous email included a final message. Get out now or you'll take the fall like the others did. Chad does this every year. The money never comes back, and someone always gets blamed. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop glowing in the dark. I had already approved over $400,000 in non-refundable deposits. The retreat was in 4 weeks, and if the pattern held, it would be canceled, the money would disappear, and I would be blamed for fraud. I was already in too deep. The next morning, I woke up with a decision made. I could not quit. I could not run, but I could try to protect myself. I needed to go over Chad's head. I needed someone in power to see what was happening before it was too late. I requested a meeting with Gerald Hampton, the CFO. I spent 2 days preparing a careful presentation. I did not directly accuse Chad of fraud. Instead, I framed everything as concerns about vendor verification procedures and questions about cost-effectiveness. I showed the comparisons, the suspicious vendor registrations, the lack of online reviews or business history. Gerald agreed to meet with me on Thursday afternoon. I brought printed copies of everything, my hands shaking slightly as I arranged them on his conference table. Gerald was in his late 50s, always impeccably dressed, with silver hair and reading glasses that he constantly adjusted. He had a reputation for being fair, but strictly by the book. What can I help you with, Florence? I started my presentation, walking him through the vendor research, the cost comparisons, the registration details. Gerald listened, nodding occasionally, asking good questions. He seemed genuinely interested. These are valid concerns, Gerald said. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. Let me look into it. Relief flooded through me. Finally, someone was listening. Then the door opened. Chad walked in. Sorry I'm late, Chad said, smiling. Gerald, thanks for including me in this meeting. I stared at Gerald. I didn't know Chad would be here. I thought it would be efficient to discuss this together, Gerald said. Chad sat down, still smiling, but his eyes were cold. Florence, I'm surprised you didn't come to me first with these concerns. We're a team, right? I just thought. It's fine, Chad said smoothly. I'm glad we can clear this up together. Gerald, Florence has been doing great work, but I think she's a bit overwhelmed by the scope of this project. She's an accountant, not an event planner, so I understand why she might be confused. I'm not confused, I said. I'm concerned about. Chad pulled out his laptop. Let me show you both something. These are emails from Florence to the vendors. He turned the screen toward Gerald. I looked at the emails displayed on Chad's screen. They were from my email address, sent to various vendors, discussing expedited payment timelines and rush processing fees. The emails talked about paying premium rates to secure services quickly. I didn't write those, I said. They're from your email account, Chad said, his voice dripping with fake concern. Florence, are you feeling okay? The stress of this project might be getting to you. Check the metadata, I said desperately. Check when they were sent, from what IP address. Gerald held up his hand. Let's all take a breath here. Florence, these emails suggest you've been approving premium rates and rush fees without proper authorization. Can you explain that? I never approved rush fees. I never sent those emails. Someone with access to my account. Are you suggesting someone hacked your email? Chad's tone was incredulous. Florence, that's a serious accusation. I'm not accusing anyone specifically. I'm just saying those emails didn't come from me. Chad shook his head sadly. Gerald, I hate to say this, but I've been noticing some concerning patterns. Florence approached me last week asking about vendor kickbacks. She wanted to know if there were, quote, opportunities for personal compensation from vendors. I told her absolutely not. That would be completely unethical. And now she's here making these strange accusations. That's not true. My voice was too loud, too desperate. I never asked about kickbacks. Gerald removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Florence, I think you need to take some time off. This project is clearly causing you stress. I don't need time off. I need someone to investigate these vendors properly. We will, Gerald said. In the meantime, I'm placing you on administrative leave while we look into these irregularities. What irregularities? I haven't done anything wrong. The emails from your account suggest otherwise. Gerald stood up. Please collect your personal items. HR will be in touch. I looked at Chad. He was trying to look sympathetic, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. He had outmaneuvered me perfectly. 20 minutes later, I was being escorted to my desk by someone from HR. Not Janet. A man named Steve, who avoided eye contact and said nothing as I packed my few personal items into a box. My access card was deactivated. My computer password was changed remotely while I stood there. As I walked out to the parking lot carrying my pathetic little box, I saw coworkers I had worked with for 6 years suddenly find reasons to look away. Word had already spread. Florence the embezzler. Florence the fraud. My phone buzzed. An email from the CEO's office. Robert Westbrook had been informed of serious financial concerns regarding my conduct. A forensic audit of all my activities had been ordered. I was not to contact anyone at the company or discuss the matter publicly. I sat in my car and cried. Then I drove home, my mind numb. That evening, I forced myself to think clearly. The emails Chad showed were fake or manipulated. They had to be. I pulled up my own email archive and searched for any messages to those vendors. Nothing. The emails did not exist in my sent folder. I checked the employee directory. Chad had full administrative access to the company email system as part of his VP role. He could have sent emails from my account, or created fake emails that appeared to be from me. But proving that would require technical forensic analysis, and I no longer had any authority to request that. I was suspended, under investigation, and completely powerless. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Drop this and resign quietly. We'll say you had family issues. No charges filed. Fight it, and we'll prosecute. You'll never work in finance again. You might go to jail. 24 hours to decide. I stared at the message. This was it. The end game. Chad was giving me a way out. Take the blame quietly and disappear. Or fight and face criminal charges with emails and evidence that would all point to me. I thought about my mother, about her medical bills, about the mortgage on her house. I thought about my own apartment, my student loans, my empty refrigerator. I thought about spending the next year fighting criminal charges I could not afford to defend against. But I also thought about David Patterson, working retail after his accounting career was destroyed. I thought about whoever else Chad had done this to. I thought about the next person he would target after me. I deleted the text and went to the police station. The detective who took my statement was polite but skeptical. I laid out everything I had. The vendor research, the family connections, the pattern of previous employees being pushed out, the anonymous email about the canceled retreat. This sounds like an internal corporate dispute, the detective said. We typically don't get involved in these types of situations. It's fraud, potentially millions of dollars. Do you have evidence that money was stolen? That services were not provided? The retreat hasn't happened yet, so technically no. So what crime has been committed? I stammered through an explanation about intent to defraud, about setting up fake companies, about the pattern of behavior. The detective closed his notebook. Ma'am, this is a civil corporate matter. If you believe you've been wrongfully terminated, you should contact an employment lawyer. If the company believes fraud has occurred after the fact, they can report it to us. But right now, there's no criminal case here. I left the police station feeling hollow. They could not help me. Or would not. As I walked to my car, I noticed a vehicle parked across the street. A black SUV. Through the tinted windows, I could barely make out a figure in the driver's seat. As I unlocked my car, the SUV pulled away, but not before I caught a glimpse of the driver. Chad. He had been watching me, following me, making sure I understood that he knew every move I made. I was not just fighting for my career anymore. I was in danger. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed watching shadows move across my ceiling, jumping at every sound. The 24-hour deadline to resign quietly was ticking down. By tomorrow evening, I would have to make a choice. Take the fall and disappear, or fight and face prosecution. My savings account had about $8,000. My last paycheck was already spent on rent and my mother's medical bills. I had no income, no job prospects, and potentially criminal charges coming. Fighting this would require a lawyer, which would require money I did not have. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Florence? This is Janet. From work. Don't say my name. Just listen. I stayed silent, my heart pounding. We can't talk long. I'm using a burner phone. Meet me at the Riverside coffee shop on Maple Street at 9 a.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. The line went dead. At 9 a.m., I sat in a booth at the back of the coffee shop, nursing a latte I could not afford. Janet arrived 10 minutes late, looking over her shoulder as she slid into the seat across from me. I can't stay long, Janet said quietly. And I can't help you officially, but you need to know what you're up against. She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. Inside were printed documents, personnel files, incident reports, email chains. I've been documenting Chad's behavior for 2 years, Janet said. I work in HR. I see everything. Every complaint, every suspicious termination, every pattern. The company won't act because Robert Westbrook protects his nephew no matter what. But I've kept records. I flipped through the pages. There were 3 other names. David Patterson, the accountant Janet had mentioned, but also Sarah Brennan, a contracts manager, and Thomas Schuler, a procurement specialist. All had worked closely with Chad on special projects. All had been terminated for financial irregularities within months. They all followed the same pattern, Janet said. Chad identifies someone who needs their job, someone vulnerable. He assigns them a project involving vendor payments. The vendors are fake or family-controlled. Then he frames the employee when questions arise. They either resign quietly or get fired, and sometimes prosecuted. Why haven't you reported this? To who? The CEO is his uncle. The board is packed with Robert's friends. HR reports to the CFO, who either doesn't care or is in on it. I have a daughter with cerebral palsy. Her care costs $40,000 a year. I can't lose my job. I have no power here. Then why are you helping me? Because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed. Janet's eyes were wet. And because maybe you can do what I can't. Maybe you can expose this. How? I'm suspended. They're talking about prosecuting me. The police won't help. The retreat is still scheduled for December 27th. It's already booked. Over $800,000 has been paid. $800,000? My voice cracked. Chad added more services last week. Upgraded everything. The total is now $870,000. My mind reeled. $870,000 for a 3-day corporate retreat. It was obscene. Here's what I know. Janet continued. The pattern is always the same. The retreat gets planned, the money gets paid, and then, at the last minute, it gets canceled. Some kind of emergency or unforeseen circumstance. The vendors keep the deposits because of cancellation clauses. The money never comes back. And the person who booked everything takes the blame. So I'm supposed to just let them destroy me? No. Janet leaned forward. You force the retreat to happen. Make sure it's so visible, so public, that when it fails, everyone will see. 80 executives showing up to discover there are no services, no resort, nothing. The fraud becomes undeniable. But that means letting $870,000 get paid out first. It's already paid out. The deposits are non-refundable. The money is gone. Your only choice now is whether the fraud stays hidden or gets exposed. If I do nothing, they'll prosecute me. Yes. And if I fight, I might still go to jail. Yes. But at least Chad goes down with you. Janet stood up. I have to go. If anyone asks, we never spoke. I'll deny everything. But Florence, whatever you decide, I hope you fight. Someone has to stop him. She left the folder with me and disappeared. I sat alone, staring at the documents. 3 other victims. Millions of dollars stolen over years. A pattern of fraud protected by family connections and corporate power. The deadline to resign quietly was in 10 hours. If I let it pass, Chad would file criminal charges. I would be arrested, prosecuted, probably convicted. My life would be over. But if I resigned, the fraud would continue. Chad would find another victim. Another vulnerable employee would be destroyed to feed his scheme. I thought about my mother, who had mortgaged her house for my college education. She had taught me that doing the right thing mattered more than taking the easy path. I thought about what I would tell her if I just gave up and let them win. I pulled out my phone and sent an email to the HR department, copying the CFO and the CEO. I declined to resign and request a full investigation with external auditors. The deadline passed. I waited. Within 2 hours, I received termination paperwork via email. Effective immediately. Reason: gross misconduct and financial malfeasance. All final pay withheld pending investigation. Legal action pending. I was fired, unemployed, about to be prosecuted, and I had $10 in my checking account. But I also had Janet's folder. I had my own documentation. I had the vendor research. I had recordings of phone calls with the fake vendors. I had proof. I filed a wrongful termination complaint with the State Labor Board. I filed a whistleblower complaint with the company's board of directors, sending detailed documentation to the audit committee. I named Chad specifically. I named the vendors. I provided the payment timeline and the evidence of fraud. That night, at 10 p.m., I heard glass breaking in my apartment. I was in my bedroom and froze. Someone was in my living room. I grabbed my phone and locked my bedroom door, dialing 911. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I could hear footsteps, drawers being opened, things being moved. The police arrived in 8 minutes. The intruder was gone. They had jimmied my front door lock. My laptop was missing. My filing cabinet had been rifled through. My notebooks were gone, but they had not taken my TV, my jewelry, or the cash I kept in my nightstand. They only took things with information. The police officer taking the report asked if I had any enemies. I almost laughed. Yes, officer. I have enemies. Powerful, wealthy enemies who are trying to destroy evidence. After the police left, I sat on my couch, shaking. They had been in my home. They had taken my physical backup files. They thought they had won, but I had uploaded everything to a secure cloud service 2 weeks ago. And I had mailed copies to my sister with instructions. If anything happens to me, send these to the FBI. The break-in was meant to intimidate me, to show me they could reach me anywhere. Instead, it proved they were desperate. It proved I had something they feared. I called my sister. I need to stay with you for a while. I'll explain when I get there. I packed a bag, locked my violated apartment, and drove 3 hours to my sister's house. As I drove, I kept checking my rearview mirror. Every set of headlights felt like a threat. But I had made my choice. I was fighting. And I was not fighting alone anymore. I spent the next week at my sister's house, sleeping on her couch, jumping at every unexpected sound. My sister, Lauren, was 4 years older than me, and had always been the protective one. When I told her everything, she wanted to call the police, hire a private investigator, go to the media immediately. We need evidence they'll listen to, I said. We need something undeniable. The company's lawyers sent me a cease and desist letter. They claimed I had stolen proprietary information and that my whistleblower complaint was actually corporate espionage. They were seeking a restraining order and criminal charges for theft of trade secrets. The board's audit committee sent a 1-paragraph response to my detailed complaint. Your allegations have been reviewed by counsel and found to be without merit. The company has full confidence in the integrity of all executive management. Further harassment of company personnel will result in additional legal action. They had not investigated. They had dismissed everything without even looking. My lawyer bills were already at $3,000, and I had barely started. The attorney I had consulted, a woman named Grace Hartley who specialized in employment law, had been blunt. You're fighting people with unlimited resources. This could take years and cost hundreds of thousands, and you might lose. I was using credit cards to pay for everything. My unemployment claim had been denied because I was terminated for cause. My last paycheck was withheld pending their investigation. I had no income and mounting debt. The harassment started. Someone created fake social media accounts in my name and posted inflammatory content. Someone filed false complaints against me with professional licensing boards. When I applied for jobs, I got initial interest followed by sudden silence. I found out later that HR at my old company was telling prospective employers I was under investigation for embezzlement. My professional reputation was being systematically destroyed. One morning, Lauren showed me a news article. The company had issued a public statement about discovering embezzlement by a former employee. They did not name me, but the business community was small. Within days, recruiters were asking me about the financial irregularities at your last job. I could not find work. I could not afford my apartment. I was drowning. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer. Is this Florence? A woman's voice, professional, confident. Yes. My name is Amanda Porter. I'm an investigative reporter with Business Week magazine. I've been covering corporate fraud in the finance sector. I received a copy of your labor board complaint. I'd like to talk. My heart raced. How did you get my number? I'm a reporter. It's what I do. Can we meet? We met at a diner 2 towns over. Amanda was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, with a leather portfolio full of notes. She ordered coffee and got straight to business. Tell me everything. I did. For 2 hours, I told her the whole story. I showed her all my documentation, the vendor research, the recorded phone calls, Janet's folder with the other victims, the pattern of fraud, the retaliation, the break-in, everything. Amanda took notes, asked probing questions, and listened intently. When I finished, she sat back and let out a low whistle. This is big. This is really big. But I need independent corroboration. Can you get me in touch with any of the other victims? I gave her David Patterson's contact information and the names of the other 2 former employees from Janet's files. I'll reach out to them, Amanda said. I'll also investigate these vendors independently. If this is real, if I can prove it, this will be front-page news, but it'll take time. The retreat is scheduled for December 27th. That's less than 3 weeks away. Then I need to move fast. Amanda paid the check. Don't contact me. I'll contact you when I have something. And Florence? Be careful. These people have already broken into your home. They're dangerous. Over the next 10 days, Amanda worked. She interviewed the other victims. She investigated the vendors, driving to the addresses and finding empty storefronts or residential homes. She requested comments from the company and from Chad personally. The company refused to comment and threatened legal action. Chad hung up on her. Amanda's editor approved the story. It was scheduled to run on December 20th, 1 week before the retreat. The headline, Nepotism and Fraud. How one tech company's executive allegedly stole millions through fake vendors. The night before publication, I could not sleep. This was it. Tomorrow, the story would break. The evidence would be public. The pressure would be on the company to act. But I was also terrified. Chad would know I was the source. What would he do? At 4 a.m. on December 20th, I was awakened by sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through Lauren's windows. Someone was pounding on the door. Police, open up. My hands shook as Lauren opened the door. 6 police officers, 2 in plain clothes. They had a warrant for my arrest. Charges: embezzlement, wire fraud, theft. The company had filed criminal charges and provided evidence to the district attorney. Emails from my account. Payment authorizations with my signature. Vendor communications. A mountain of fabricated evidence that made me look guilty. I was handcuffed in my sister's living room at 4:15 a.m., read my rights, and taken to the county jail. My bail hearing was at 2 p.m. The prosecutor asked for $100,000 bail, citing flight risk and the severity of the charges. My lawyer argued I had no criminal record, strong community ties, and nowhere to run. The judge set bail at $50,000. $50,000. I did not have $50,000. I did not have $5,000. I called my mother from jail. She was 72 years old, living on Social Security and a small pension, and she mortgaged her house to post my bail. I got out at 8 p.m., 12 hours after my arrest. Lauren picked me up. As we drove home, she showed me her phone. Amanda's article had published that morning. It was everywhere, trending on social media, picked up by other news outlets. The story of corporate fraud and nepotism was going viral, but so was news of my arrest. Skeptics online were pointing to my charges as proof I was the real criminal. The narrative was splitting. Some people believed I was a whistleblower being persecuted. Others believed I was a thief trying to deflect blame. The retreat was in 7 days. The company showed no signs of canceling it, and I was facing 10 years in prison for crimes I did not commit. Chad had played his final card perfectly. Even if I exposed the fraud, I was now a suspected criminal. My credibility was destroyed. He could claim I had fabricated everything to cover my own guilt. I had lost. The next morning, I woke up on Lauren's couch feeling hollowed out. My mother's house, the house I had grown up in, was now collateral for my freedom. If I missed a court date or violated any bail conditions, she would lose everything. Amanda's article was still trending, but the comment sections were vicious. Half the people thought I was brave. Half thought I was a liar and a thief. My mugshot from the arrest was circulating online, paired with headlines like "Alleged embezzler claims innocence" and "Former accountant arrested after whistleblower retaliation claims." The company issued another statement. CEO Robert Westbrook held a press conference, looking grave and disappointed. "We are victims here, Miss. Florence Thompson attempted to steal from this company and is now engaging in a smear campaign against innocent executives, including my nephew, to deflect from her own crimes. We have full confidence in our leadership team. The executive retreat will proceed as planned. We will not be intimidated by false accusations." Grace Hartley, my lawyer, called with bad news. "The prosecution has a strong circumstantial case. The emails, the payment authorizations, all the documentation points to you. Unless we can prove those were fabricated, which requires expert forensic analysis that costs tens of thousands of dollars, we're fighting uphill. So I'm going to prison. I don't know. But you need to prepare for that possibility." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. The retreat was in 5 days. 5 days until December 27th. 5 days until 80 executives would show up in Colorado expecting luxury accommodations and find nothing, unless Chad canceled it. If he canceled now, claimed some emergency, the fraud would never be exposed. The money would stay gone. I would be convicted. He would win. My phone rang. Unknown number. I was learning to hate unknown numbers. "Florence Thompson?" A woman's voice. Older. Businesslike. "Yes, my name is Patricia Sullivan. I'm with Mercer and Associates. We're the external auditing firm for your former employer." I sat up. "Okay. I've read Amanda Porter's article with great interest. I've also reviewed some of the documentation you filed with the Labor Board. I need to speak with you off the record. We met at a law office in the city. Neutral ground. Patricia was in her 60s, gray hair and a neat bun, wearing a conservative suit. She had the look of someone who had seen every type of corporate malfeasance and was surprised by none of it. "I've been auditing this company for 8 years, Patricia said once we were alone in a conference room. "Every year, there are anomalies. Large vendor payments for events and services, always approved by executive management. So we don't question them deeply. But the amounts have been growing." She showed me internal audit reports. 3 years ago, $300,000 in event services. 2 years ago, $500,000. Last year, $700,000. This year's retreat, if it goes forward, is $870,000. The largest yet. It's all fraud, I said. Those vendors are fake. The services will never be delivered. I suspected as much when I read the article. But I can't officially do anything without the audit committee requesting an investigation. And the audit committee chairman is the CEO's brother-in-law. So why are you here? Because if something happens during this retreat, something public and undeniable that constitutes a clear breach of fiduciary duty, the board would be forced to act. The SEC could get involved. Criminal investigations could be opened that I would have to support with our audit findings. I understood what she was saying. You need the fraud to be exposed in a way that can't be covered up. I need the retreat to fail so publicly, with so many witnesses, that ignoring it would be impossible. The retreat is in 5 days. Yes, I can't go. I have a restraining order keeping me away from company events, but you can make sure it happens. You can make sure every executive shows up. You can make sure the failure is spectacular. I thought about it. The executives were already planning to go. Travel arrangements were made. But I could ensure high attendance. I could build anticipation. Over the next 2 days, using a personal email account, I sent messages to every executive on the retreat list. I used enthusiastic language about the luxury resort, the exclusive amenities, the once-in-a-lifetime experience. I forwarded them confirmation details, spa menus, ski slope maps. I made it sound incredible. I could not go to Colorado myself, but Amanda Porter could. She had press credentials. She was covering luxury corporate retreats for a feature article. She booked a hotel in Aspen and prepared to document everything. Patricia Sullivan also made plans to be nearby. If something went wrong, she wanted to be close enough to respond immediately. December 26th arrived. Christmas had passed in a blur. I had spent it at Lauren's house, barely able to eat, watching the clock tick down. Executives were traveling, posting on social media about their excitement for the retreat. 80 people, all heading to Colorado, all expecting luxury. The address for the retreat was in my documentation. Pine Valley Luxury Resort in Aspen. I had Google Street Viewed it 100 times. From the satellite images, it looked like a legitimate resort. December 27th dawned cold and clear. I was 3 states away, but my phone was glued to my hand. At 9 a.m. Colorado time, Amanda sent me a text. I'm at the address. It's not a luxury resort. She sent photos. The address led to a run-down motel on the outskirts of Aspen. 2 stories, peeling paint, a gravel parking lot with weeds growing through the cracks. A faded sign read Mountain View Motor Lodge. It was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour. The executives started arriving at 9:30 a.m. Luxury cars and hired SUVs pulling into the parking lot. 80 people in expensive ski gear, looking confused. Amanda filmed everything. Executives checking their phones, arguing with each other, calling the office. The motel manager coming out to say they had no reservation for any corporate group. The growing realization that something was very, very wrong. Chad was there. Amanda captured him on video, frantically making phone calls, his face red with anger or panic or both. The executives started calling the vendors. Alpine Luxury Transportation. Disconnected number. Mountain Peak Catering. No one answered. Summit Spa Services. Voicemail box full. Elite Ski Instruction. Number not in service. Nothing was there. No ski instructors. No spa services. No catering. No transportation back to the airport. 80 executives were stranded in Aspen with nowhere to stay and no services, despite the company having paid $870,000. Gerald Hampton, the CFO, started pulling up payment records on his laptop. He called the vendor numbers, looked up the business addresses. His face went pale as he realized all of them were fake. Chad tried to blame me. Amanda's camera caught him shouting, "Florence Thompson booked everything. She must have set this up. She sabotaged us." But several executives had the original planning emails. They showed Chad's directives, his vendor requirements, his insistence on using specific companies. They showed my concerns being overruled. Gerald pulled Chad aside. Amanda could not hear the conversation, but she filmed Chad's body language. Defensive, then angry, then frightened. By noon, the story was breaking online. Amanda's photos and videos went viral. Corporate fraud exposed. 80 executives stranded after $900,000 scam. The company's stock price started dropping. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting for the next morning, December 28th. Patricia Sullivan was called in immediately to present her audit findings, and I received a phone call from the board secretary. "Miss Thompson, the board requests your presence at tomorrow's emergency meeting. 9 a.m. Your testimony is needed." I hung up, shaking. This was it. My moment. But I was also terrified. Chad was still free, still dangerous. That night, I got a call from another unknown number. Chad's voice. "You've destroyed everything. My career, my uncle's company, my family's name. I will make you pay for this." The line went dead. I did not sleep. I wondered if he would come after me, if I would even make it to the meeting. But Lauren sat up with me all night, and in the morning, we drove to the company headquarters together. Security was everywhere. Media vans lined the street. I walked through those doors, ready to tell my story one final time. The boardroom was on the top floor. All glass windows and polished mahogany. I had never been in this room before. As a senior accountant, I was several levels below the people who met here. But today, I sat at the long conference table, flanked by my lawyer Grace Hartley, facing the full board of directors. 10 board members sat across from me. CEO Robert Westbrook looked 20 years older than his press conference 3 days ago. CFO Gerald Hampton sat to his right, staring at his hands. Patricia Sullivan, the auditor, had a thick folder of documents in front of her. The company's legal team occupied one side of the table, and at the far end, looking like he wanted to disappear, sat Chad Westbrook. The board chairman, a stern woman in her 70s named Carolyn Hughes, called the meeting to order. This emergency session has been convened to address serious allegations of fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. Ms. Sullivan, please present your findings. Patricia stood and activated the screen behind her. The first slide showed a single line. Total amount paid for December 2024 executive retreat, $870,000. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Even they seemed shocked by the number displayed so starkly. Patricia walked through her presentation with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times. She showed every payment, every vendor, every approval. She displayed business registration documents showing that Mountain Peak Catering was owned by Bradley Westbrook, Chad's brother. She showed that Alpine Luxury Transportation was registered to an address that turned out to be Chad's parents' vacation home. She showed that Summit Spa Services had been incorporated 6 months ago and had no employees, no business license, no tax filings. "These are shell companies," Patricia said. "They exist only on paper to receive payments. No services were ever intended to be provided." She clicked to the next slide. A timeline going back 5 years. This pattern repeats annually. Each year, executive retreats or corporate events are planned. Large sums are paid to vendors with connections to the Westbrook family. Events are either canceled at the last minute or fail to deliver services. Money is not recovered. The numbers appeared on screen. Year 1, $280,000. Year 2, $320,000. Year 3, $490,000. Year 4, $700,000. Year 5, $870,000. Total estimated theft over 5 years, $2,660,000. The room was silent. How was this not caught sooner? Carolyn Hughes asked. Executive expenses were approved by the CFO and CEO, so our annual audits did not flag them as suspicious. We verified that payments were made and that proper authorization existed. We did not verify that services were actually delivered. Carolyn turned to Gerald Hampton. CFO Hampton, what is your response? Gerald looked up, his face gray. I trusted Chad Westbrook because he was the CEO's nephew. I approved expenses without proper due diligence. I failed in my responsibility to protect company assets. I take full accountability. He slid a letter across the table. My resignation. Effective. Immediately. Carolyn accepted the letter, then turned to me. Miss Thompson, please tell us your account of these events. I took a breath and began. I told them about Thanksgiving morning, about Chad's cruelty and his threat. I told them about being assigned the event planning project, despite it being completely outside my role. I told them about discovering the vendor connections and trying to report it, only to be framed and retaliated against. I tried to do the right thing at every step, I said. I researched alternative vendors to save the company money. I raised concerns about verification procedures. I reported the suspicious patterns to management, and for that, I was accused of fraud, suspended, fired, arrested, and charged with crimes I did not commit. I pulled out my phone and played the recorded conversations with the fake vendors. Voices admitting they did not actually provide services. Evasive answers about business operations. One vendor literally saying, "We just process payments. We don't do events." I documented everything because I knew I was being set up. I saved every email, every directive from Chad, every piece of evidence I could find. And when that wasn't enough, when they broke into my home and tried to destroy my documentation, I had already backed everything up. I looked directly at Chad. He would not meet my eyes. Mr. Westbrook framed me because I was vulnerable. I needed my job. I was helping my mother with medical bills. He thought I would be easy to manipulate and easy to blame. He was wrong. Carolyn turned to Chad. Mr. Westbrook, do you have anything to say in your defense? Chad's lawyer leaned over and whispered something. Chad shook his head. I declined to make a statement on advice of counsel. Then let me share what we've uncovered, Carolyn said. She nodded to Patricia, who clicked to a new slide. It showed bank records, Chad's personal accounts, deposits matching the amounts paid to the fake vendors, just days or weeks after the company payments went through. Bradley Westbrook's accounts, their parents' accounts, money flowing from the fake vendor companies into the family's personal finances. We obtained these through subpoena yesterday, Carolyn said. The forensic accounting is clear. This was a coordinated scheme to defraud the company. She clicked again. Police reports. We also have evidence linking Chad's brother Bradley to the break-in at Miss Thompson's apartment. DNA evidence was recovered from the scene. Bradley Westbrook has been arrested. Another click. Phone records. We have the threatening phone call Chad made to Miss Thompson on December 27th. It was recorded and traced. That constitutes witness intimidation. Carolyn looked at Chad with contempt. Mr. Westbrook, you are terminated for cause. Effective immediately. The company will pursue full legal remedies, including criminal prosecution, civil recovery of all stolen funds, and any other applicable charges. Security will escort you from the building. 2 security officers appeared at the door. Chad stood, his face red, his hands shaking. As he was let out, he looked at me one last time. The smugness was gone. Only fear remained. Once the door closed, Carolyn turned back to me. Miss Thompson, on behalf of this board and this company, I apologize. You were treated abominably. You showed courage and integrity in circumstances where most people would have simply walked away. You saved this company from continuing down a path of fraud and corruption. Robert Westbrook finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Florence, I owe you a personal apology. My nephew exploited my trust and my family name to commit crimes. He hurt innocent people, including you. I failed in my duty to maintain proper oversight. I take responsibility for that failure. He slid his own letter across the table. My resignation as CEO. Effective at the end of the month. The company needs new leadership that wasn't compromised by this scandal. Carolyn accepted it, then turned back to me. Miss Thompson, the company would like to offer you a position. Director of Internal Audit and Compliance. Reporting directly to the board. Your job would be to implement systems and procedures to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. The salary would be commensurate with the director level, approximately $180,000 annually, plus benefits and a signing bonus to compensate you for your legal expenses and lost wages. I looked at Grace, my lawyer, who gave me a small nod. I accept with some conditions, I said. Name them. First, Janet Moreno from HR. She provided crucial information at great personal risk. I want her promoted to HR director with appropriate compensation. Carolyn made a note. Agreed. Second, the 3 previous employees who were framed by Chad and forced out. David Patterson, Sarah Brennan, and Thomas Schuler. They deserve public exoneration, formal apologies, and financial settlements. Agreed. We'll reach out to them immediately. Third, all criminal charges against me must be dropped, with prejudice, and the company must issue a public statement, clearing my name completely, already in progress. The district attorney has been notified. Your record will be expunged. And fourth, comprehensive new vendor verification procedures. Every vendor must be vetted by an independent compliance team. No executive can approve payments to companies they have any connection to without board approval. That will be your job to implement, Carolyn said. Do we have an agreement? I thought about everything I had lost. My job, my reputation, my sense of security, my mother's house as collateral. I thought about the sleepless nights, the fear, the harassment, but I also thought about the victory. Chad was finished. The fraud was exposed. Other victims would be vindicated. The system that allowed this would be dismantled. We have an agreement, I said. The next week moved in a blur. Criminal charges against me were formally dismissed. The district attorney issued a statement saying I had been a victim of fraud and retaliation, not a perpetrator. My mugshot was replaced in the news with articles about my courage as a whistleblower. Chad and Bradley Westbrook were both arrested on multiple charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, breaking and entering, witness intimidation. Federal prosecutors took over the case due to the amounts involved and the interstate nature of the crimes. Their lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecution refused. They were going to trial, facing 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Amanda Porter won a journalism award for her investigative reporting. She wrote a follow-up article titled "Whistleblower Vindicated: One Woman's Fight Against Corporate Fraud." My story became a case study in business ethics classes. I started receiving invitations to speak at conferences about whistleblower protection and corporate accountability. The company settled with David Patterson, Sarah Brennan, and Thomas Schuler. Each received $250,000 and formal letters of apology. Their employment records were corrected. David got job offers from 3 different firms and went back to accounting. Sarah started her own consulting business. Thomas retired early with his settlement. Janet Moreno became HR director and became one of my closest allies in reforming the company's culture. My mother's house was freed from the bail bond. With my signing bonus and back pay, I paid off all her medical bills and put money into a trust for her care. I moved back into my apartment, changed the locks, installed a security system, and slowly began to feel safe again. 1 year later, on Thanksgiving morning, I woke up at my sister Lauren's house. The smell of turkey and stuffing filled the air. My nieces and nephews were running around the living room. My mother sat in the armchair, healthy and laughing. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. Board meeting today. Found 2 more suspicious vendor relationships in the sales division. Flagged them for investigation. The Florence effect strikes again. I smiled and put the phone away. This Thanksgiving, I was exactly where I belonged. Not alone in a cubicle, afraid and trapped, but surrounded by family, safe and strong. I thought back to Chad's text message from 1 year ago. You're single. No kids. Perfect for holiday duty. He had thought my lack of attachments made me weak and easy to control. He was wrong. Having less to lose meant I could risk everything. My solitude meant I could act without endangering others. My need for the job made me careful and thorough. Every quality he saw as weakness became my strength. The doorbell rang. Amanda Porter arrived with her husband and kids, invited to join our celebration. She had become a friend through this ordeal. We had learned that sometimes the people who stand with you in your darkest moments become family. As we gathered around the table, Lauren asked everyone to share what they were grateful for. When it came to my turn, I looked around at these faces, these people who had supported me, believed in me, and helped me survive. I'm grateful for truth, I said. For courage. For people who stand up even when it costs them everything. And I'm grateful that justice, even when it takes time, can still prevail. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Florence. You could have taken the easy way out. You could have stayed silent. But you fought. And you won. We won. I corrected. None of this would have happened without all of you. After dinner, as I helped wash dishes, I reflected on everything I had learned. The system is not designed to protect whistleblowers. Power protects itself. Doing the right thing can cost you everything, but silence costs more. Allowing corruption to continue, allowing bullies to destroy lives, that cost is too high. I had lost months of my life to fear and struggle, but I had gained something more valuable. I had learned that I was stronger than I knew, that integrity matters, that persistence can overcome power, that one person, armed with truth and courage, can bring down an empire of lies. The legal system is slow. Justice delayed feels like justice denied. But documentation, patience, and refusing to give up can change the outcome. My obsessive record-keeping, my careful preservation of evidence, my refusal to resign quietly, all of it mattered. And I had learned that vulnerability is not the same as weakness. Chad targeted me because he thought I was vulnerable. He was right. I was. But vulnerability combined with determination is a force that entitled, powerful people never see coming. They expect vulnerable people to submit. They don't expect us to fight. The next week, I went back to work as Director of Internal Audit and Compliance. I implemented new systems, trained staff on fraud detection, and created protocols to prevent anyone from ever being in the position I had been in. Every new hire attended a session on whistleblower protections and reporting mechanisms. We created anonymous reporting channels. We established independent review boards. I made it my mission to ensure that the next Florence Thompson would be believed, supported, and protected, not destroyed. 6 months into my new role, a junior accountant named Emily came to my office. She was nervous, wringing her hands. I think I found something irregular, she said quietly. I listened as she laid out her concerns about a vendor relationship that seemed suspicious. She had done research. She had documentation. She was scared of retaliation. You did exactly the right thing by coming to me, I said. You will be protected. Your concerns will be investigated properly. And thank you for having the courage to speak up. She left my office looking relieved, and I felt a sense of purpose I had never experienced before. My suffering had meaning. The hell I went through could prevent someone else from experiencing the same. Chad and Bradley Westbrook were convicted at trial 9 months after their arrests. Chad received 18 years in federal prison. Bradley received 12. They both faced asset forfeiture, paying back everything they had stolen. Their appeals were denied. Robert Westbrook, the former CEO, cooperated fully with investigators. He was not charged criminally but paid substantial fines and was barred from serving as an executive of any public company. He issued a public statement taking responsibility for his failures of oversight and apologizing to all the victims of his nephew's crimes. 2 years after everything happened, I was invited to testify before a congressional committee examining corporate fraud and whistleblower protections. I told my story. I explained the gaps in the system. I made recommendations for stronger protections and faster investigative responses. Some of my suggestions became part of new legislation. Not all, but some. Progress is slow, but it's still progress. I never wanted to be a whistleblower. I never wanted to be the person who stood up against powerful people and risked everything. I just wanted to do my job, help my mother, and live a quiet life. But sometimes life puts you in positions where you have to choose between the easy path and the right path, between silence and truth, between self-preservation and integrity. I chose truth. It cost me almost everything, but I gained something I can never lose: the knowledge that when it mattered most, I did not back down. So, if you're watching this, and you've ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong, where you saw corruption or fraud or injustice, and you wondered if speaking up was worth it, let me tell you, it is worth it. It will be hard. It might cost you more than you can imagine. But living with the knowledge that you stood up for what was right is worth any price. Have you ever witnessed something wrong at work but stayed silent because you were afraid? What would it take for you to speak up? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and standing up against corruption. Share this with someone who needs to hear that one person can make a difference. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your voice matters, your courage counts, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, will eventually win. Stay strong, stay honest, and never let anyone make you feel powerless. You have more strength than you know.